You to the India in Making podcast. Today I am here with a special guest for this podcast, Dr. Sankaran sir, who is actually the author of these two books. One is Beauty and Truth and one is Choose and Plan Your Career. So welcome you to the show, sir.
Thank you.
So Sankaran sir, I have been a fan with respect to you when you talk about education and institution and how education should be. So can you just speak out about your journey of how you got into this field and what's your motive behind that?
Yeah, well, it took me a while to figure out that, I should be an academic.
Mm-hmm.
So my journey started with consulting, which I went to after MBA in Bangalore, IIM Bangalore. And after about 5 years of working there, I wanted two things. One is to go into the real management, in the sense project management. I thought, and also another voice within me was telling me that maybe I'm more suited for research. In consulting, as you know, you make reports. It's applied research. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, of course. So I thought, let me just try for a PhD. After working for a few years in consulting and in project management. And of course, that bug bit me. And I always wanted to experiment with life. I was always kind of experimenting in many respects. Even during engineering, I was always fascinated by inventors. So I used to tinker with different things, and spoil a lot of things in my house, which my mother was quite patient towards, I guess. What I found after the PhD was that, there is so much scope for doing things based on actually, thinking through things. So to me, academia is really about understanding the subtlety of things. After all, science is really about two things. Well, actually three things. One of them is cause-effect relationships. So what do you need to do, especially to get good results? So when we have a research orientation, we'll always try to figure out the basic causes and try and see how it can be influenced. So to me, research is about good thinking and subtle thinking. And very, very practical thinking. It may not be practical immediately, but it will have some practice for future. So the beauty of academics is really you're able to have a lot of people, youngsters, students, and academic colleagues who are thinking through ideas and trying to make these ideas practical. So the best of things actually happens in a human mind. It may not be there right now. So we can't compare ourselves with somebody with money or with power or even intellect. The best of things happen in our brains, and we want to make them practical. It might take a little longer, but academics is that freedom to think of new things. How do we make our community better? How do we make our people happier? How do I make myself happier? How do I find out the relationship between happiness and maybe happiness and good for one's own happiness, as well as seeing happy people. When are we happy? When we are happy, when we have happy people around us, right? So all these things are important to management.
True.
So when I came back from abroad after a PhD, I realized that there's so much that is there in this country. There's so much energy in this country at the youth level. But then why is it that we are not at the forefront of thinking ahead? And so I believe it's because we are not given this particular aspect of knowledge enough importance. Now, I'm sure that a person who is doing, let's say, trading, he should certainly believe that the trade is more important. I should get money. Every trade should be profitable to me, as profitable as it should be. Fair enough. We need everybody in this country. That's India for you. That's why we are a pluralistic nation. It's not because we have different races. Yes, we do have. But the most important thing is to know the place for everyone in the scheme of things. So I found that academia is the best place for me, especially after doing consulting, where I thought that there should be more fundamental questions asked, because it is not applied research. That is very successful in applied research. I learned a lot of things over there, which I bring to the class these days. Then we have to ask even more fundamental questions. So that's what ticks me. I guess.
Okay. So, in your journey, you mentioned about one thing where you said about subtle thinking. So, can you just explain our readers that what do you
What
mean
is
by
subtle
that?
thinking?
Yeah.
Well, subtle thinking is this. Supposing we want to increase productivity.
Mm-hmm.
At one level, we can think about increasing productivity by saying that, okay, let me go out and measure how many hours people are actually working.
Mm-hmm.
So then I measure and say they're actually working only for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right? At one level, I will say this should be made 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? I can take a whip
Mm-hmm.
and hit these guys,
Mhm.
and instead of 6 hours, they are working for 8 hours. That is at one level.
Mm-hmm.
A more subtle level is, well, before that, if I am concerned about quality, and if I am open enough to think about quality, I will say that, well, what is the quality of the product that's coming out? It may be let's say, a machine product or something that is bent, for instance. So I'll have some parameters for quality. So I may not also, may find that my quality is going for a toss by making them work 8 hours, for instance.
Mhm.
Now, when I say subtle thinking, this is one level of subtle thinking. That I have two dimensions now, speed and quality.
Mm-hmm.
Next level, I'm going to say, okay, can I make these people work harder and more accurate by giving them more money?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe at the same level as the previous one. Right? But at some level, I will say, okay, how do I convince them of the importance of quality? Do I have it in me to give them some additional incentives for quality? Do I have a quality control department? At some point, I might even think that, well, why should human beings keep on doing this repetitive work? Right? Can I actually give them some help with machines? It could be a hybrid system, for instance. So, at some point, I might say, do I need this at all? I know a very interesting inventor who is in Bombay. He's a SSLC graduate.
Mm-hmm.
He goes around and gives consulting advice to companies like L&T and Godrej.
Mm-hmm.
And I had invited him to SP Jain when I was in the faculty there.
Mm-hmm.
And amazing inventor. Now, he was telling how a rotary cutter, instead of a reciprocating cutter, the cutter that keeps on going up and down, could save a lot of money for one of these companies that he was consulting with. Well-known company. So one of the MTech guys, we were doing some management development programs for them. So he said, this is one great guru you should meet. And this person who was a SSLC person was giving such advice to these very, very capable and very, very well accomplished masters and engineers in these companies. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, so subtle thinking is about trying to figure out why certain things are happening. So you go back to the reasons. Is there a reason why people are working this way? Right? So in the first example that I said. So we go back and back and back. Then at some point we'll find that even the question that we are asking may disappear because that question is no more relevant. This particular product can be built in a completely different way, for instance. We foreclose all those possibilities by just going directly into something. So education to me is about going back and looking at from a distance and seeing possibilities and making sure that all this is done while the head is above water. So it's not just artistry alone, but being very practical, making sure that you make profits, you are okay with all the stakeholders. Along with that, you also think in the long term. So it's not about short term versus, it's about short term and the long term. And how do we combine these two? That is the great challenge. So we are neither for this or that entirely, we are for both. And that's what real nature is about to me. Nature is about surviving in the worst of conditions, but also flowering and being in a completely state of abundance when the time is right. So that flexibility is what we should bring between our two ears. So we can respect knowledge people, we can respect people who are for power. We also have to respect people who count money and do the transaction. We need them. So we need all kinds of people for a society to be built. It's not about just one thing.
It's about coexisting.
It's about coexistence of all these different things. You need soil, you need water, you need air, you need space, all the Panchabuddhas
Yes.
you need for growth. Same thing with the society. You need all these things to grow. So personally I have chosen knowledge as an area for me. That doesn't mean that I should not go back to something else or somebody else should do the same thing. No. Everything is important. Everybody has a place at the table. That is the great Indian thing. There's no one model that fits all. The Western model of development. No.
True. So can you also tell about, like, because I have seen you doing general for a lot of things with respect to higher education. Can you talk about like what needs to be done with respect to higher education? What's your perspective? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, see, India is a great country when you take our tradition for knowledge. All societies have their own, history of knowledge seeking and knowledge recording and knowledge development. India also has a certain tradition, we all know. We have a tremendously ancient knowledge culture in this country. And I, for one, believe that whatever I achieved, whatever I got from my early teachers, from my family, all that is contributed by this, this kind of impulse that I always had about knowledge when I was young. That came from my culture. So I feel that higher education, I can talk about higher education.
Yeah.
Higher education in India is highly faulted. Because we took the Thomas Macaulay model actually.
True.
So in the mid 19th century, we adopted the University of London model and we did not adopt the University of Oxford or Cambridge model. So what Macaulay wanted to do was create automatons who would actually do things which would help the Raj. So there was no thinking about equality, thinking about beauty, thinking about justice. Those were not to be done in the university. He wanted to actually destroy whatever was there. And there is enough evidence. I have British friends. I admire some of them. And American friends. Amazing people are there. I'm in touch with them. The point is, Macaulay was not understanding the strength of our country. Certainly not. It was the height of colonization of the time. So he brought the University of London model, which is a affiliation system. Now, personally, I didn't know that this system was so dominant in our thinking until I came to the university system about 4 years ago. Otherwise, I was at independent universities, independent institutions where there was no MBA, it was PGDM and so on. I also went to such institutions earlier, deemed universities, like the best of the institutions in our country of education, in engineering and management. I found this university system is deeply dysfunctional. We have created universities for engineering, we've created universities for folklore art at the state level, and an enormous amount of funding actually goes to these institutions. And at the same time, we talk about choice-based credit system. I'll just give you an example. And this is absolutely at odds with the kind of policies we have. How can you have a choice-based credit system, proper choice-based credit system, when you have a university which is only offering engineering courses, for instance?
True.
So a Visionaries, university has got all different thoughts intermingled. And the student takes what he or she thinks is most appropriate for the person. He's not a machine to be an employable machine. He brings, even at the undergraduate level, at any level, he brings the best onto the table, and then he comes to the work, life, to the society at large. And when you start doing that, if you really start touching base with the real abilities and the real aspirations of students, I think there are a lot of jobs, at least at the level at which I am talking about MBA, for instance. Because we also find a lot of non-employable people. Why? It's because we haven't touched the heart of these people. So I think we need to touch the heart and the head. Okay? You can't have everything done only through the head, especially when it militates against our own inner impulse. Why, I keep saying this, has to be, the question of why has to be answered by the heart. But head has to answer the question how. So both are very important. Truth and beauty, both are important. If truth seeking is a scientific endeavor, beauty seeking is an endeavor of the humanities. We have to combine both.
True.
The Nobel Prize winner Chandrasekhar, he writes a book on beauty and truth. In this book you mentioned about...
It's a book where it's already been written a lot on the kind of concept what Sankaran sir is explaining right now. So it's an amazing book where if you can do it and go out, it's available in Amazon, right?
It is available.
Yeah, so you can actually have a copy of this for you. Thank you.
So it's a puzzle actually. When we are talking about this is a puzzle. It's a quadrant puzzle. So this protagonist is solving a puzzle of truth and beauty. And I'm saying what are the vulgar variants of that? Because in the name of seeking truth, we can be very high-handed also. For instance. So this is about solving a puzzle for himself, and he's coming to terms with himself, not the protagonist. And at the end, he finds truth and beauty are not two different things. It's the same in the end. So he figures that out. Now, this reconciliation of opposites, whether it's self versus the opposite, the society, or whether it's self versus the other person, or whether it's about discipline versus hard work. Okay, whether it's respect for women and respect for men. All these are, at one level, they're contradictions. You earlier you asked me, what do you mean by subtle? Subtle. So subtlety is rising above and closing the gap and seeing oneness in all these things. So at the highest level, it's about seeing the self and the other merge. That happens only when we are disembodied entirely. It is a spiritual experience, at the highest level of Vedanta. Not everybody is privy to this. I'm not privy to this yet. But the point is, a mind that seeks oneness is what, to me, education, at least humanities education, should do.
True.
So, it's a very deep subject, unitive mind versus dissective mind and so on. I've tried to develop these ideas a little bit further. So India has an opportunity, provided we trust people and we create systems where trust is. Otherwise, we'll always be... on the one side, we are told to be trusting and trustworthy. On the other side, we cannot. So we have to create systems. That is management. To me, about management is about creating positive sum games and create a system where good sense can prevail because you are incentivizing good sense. So we can't wait for everybody to be a Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is too great a person. We didn't deserve him at one level. Okay?
True.
But if you take the history of India, he came out of that. So at some level we deserve it. At a spiritual level, yes. But at a practical, transactional level, I think it was too good. So we can't wait for such great people. We have to create greatness within us, each other. That is what structures do. I'm saying good structures. The structures can create problems, bureaucracy and so on. Negative bureaucracy. So management is about creating that. So in the higher education, we have to create these fields, the attractive fields. As I have a physicist friend who he talks about, self-order and quantum theory and all. So essentially, we have to create that field where good sense can prevail. How do you do it? By having leadership, by having communication, by creating a group of people who can actually drive a bigger idea, which simply we can't do. We are waiting for the avatar to come. Avatar will come only when things become extremely bad, because the God finds that. But otherwise, we have to take it in our hands and we have to be responsible.
True. Fantastic. So, what are the initiatives being taken forward in your college in JKSHM, wherein you are actually moving forward so that we can actually be the example for others?
Okay. Well, I think we are not IIMs, right? But then we have to believe that we can do some wonderful things. And when we start doing things which are based on trust, for instance, within the domain of our regulations, we tell the students to actually challenge us, for instance. Students have challenged me also. In almost every class when I come back, there will be some point that I will get in terms of changing the way I was thinking about a slide, for instance. Right? So we ask the students to be challenging us. Second thing is we have a huge task in leadership development of our faculty. So we have to really tell them how to actually combine the heart and the head. So we have a mentor system. So in the mentoring system, we are saying that everything is admissible for the student to talk to the faculty in confidentiality. So we try and find out why, if a person is not doing well, for instance, what is it that is holding the person? Or if he is an absolute brilliant person, we try and see, what is it that we can challenge him or her. We'll have a separate project, for instance, for such persons. We have a project called MI, Management in Action, where we get students to go out and help small businesses to solve a situation that they're facing, or generate an opportunity. If there's an opportunity, how do we contribute to making use of that opportunity? So we'll do market research. My students have done market research. In one case, they even identified projects for them. Okay, they do studies on productivity. So it's about a consulting project. We don't say that you are just students. We tell them, go there modestly, try and meet the chief person, respect that person, and make sure that you try and get to talk to the owner himself, or somebody who's really in the top management, and tell them that, well, there must be something that you would like to have done if you had time. We will do that work. So in a modest way, they go and try and do some consulting work. So essentially, it's about creating trust and being open. All the time, students have the freedom to come and talk about why we are, as an institution, why we are doing certain things. Respect for diversity, respect for enterprising attitude. So we have projects where entrepreneurial projects are supported. We even say that in many of these projects, if you want to start something on your own, start that on day one, and then we will make sure that the faculty would help you to develop it, whether it's in the finance or marketing or whatever.
Take that first step.
Take that first step. After that, ideally it should be in groups. Now we have done this in a very minuscule way. In some projects, they go to their father, mother. We have some students who have done a project over here, they want to implement it. We want to do more and more of them. But very often, I tell my students, see, ultimately the greatest enemy is from within. We are our own enemy. That's true. Next thing is peer pressure. So I tell the students, well, get into these groups, get them to help you with, you take them out to your company if you have a company such as this, or you have a dream. Sell the idea to the group. Now let this whole group try and help you. So we are trying to create social capital, which already actually exists in our society. So we are trying to do this through a harmonious process where I tell my students that, I openly say, all these evaluations are necessary evil. Why do we have to have these tests? Only because we don't have free riders. And when you go out from here, you should know these techniques and so on. Okay, that is important. You should know how to calculate certain things, whether it is a project management, in finance you should know how to calculate present value or internal rate of return and so on. Or in marketing, you should know the language system. But beyond that, there is something else that you're developing. That's through 7 different factors we have defined, which is coming from our mission statement. That includes inner voice, listening to your own inner voice. It has diversity appreciation. So we show them how diversity actually helps, rather than create disorder. So these kind of discussions are happening in every class, actually. So when we are saying, don't ever compare yourself with IIMs or for that matter anybody. We stand lightly, so that we don't have these compulsive behavior saying that I am from so and so institution and so on. So basically, we are trying to get them to be more in touch with themselves, and in the process get a job where I tell them, just as employer has a choice to choose you, you have a choice to choose an employer. So how do you balance between your own self-interest and interest of the organization? So when people come here and tell us, they say that our students are very grounded. They give us that feedback, and I'm happy that we are able to utilize this local social capital that exists in the village. So Mahatma Gandhi said, India lives in villages. So cities, that's another issue actually. Cities Not, it's more insular, and they ask, what is there in it for me? So we have students who can give themselves to a cause, I think, in a big way. So we have to train them up, in consonance with that. So our effort is through a vision statement. We have rubrics for all these different things that we are testing them. No, those rubrics are not exams. That's for us to, we use it. We don't burden the students with those things. So we don't ask them to be more entrepreneurial. We test it, say, are they really entrepreneurial? Our projects really, enhancing their entrepreneurial ability? Do we put a stop to their creativity by saying, no, you have to do this? So for that, we need to have a lot of discussion amongst ourselves. So we encourage students to go to other faculty for this subject itself and keep an open environment. And at the end of it, it just happens that one person is teaching finance, but he or she may also be able to answer some other questions. So there's a lot of work that's going on among the faculty to do that, and it's percolating down to students also.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's been a great insight on the things like how you are doing in JKSM and what are the initiatives being taken so far.
Well, my name is Sankaran, and I head Justice K.S. Hegde Institute of Management. We are a management school offering MBA and PhD programs in management. Well, this is a book that I wrote a couple of years ago. It came out in 2014, published by Notion Press. Yeah, see this. So this book is really about how we can retain values, ethical values, and how these values are important for long-term sustainability. It's also about how we could lose our values. We are in the midst of trying to create opportunities. So even very well-meaning, good, solid minds and intellects and characters could slip into some form of diabolical situations. That's at one level. This book can be looked at different levels. It can be seen as a book that reconciles between opposites. So in this case, it is reconciled between reason and harmony, or truth and beauty. So this book is really about those people who want to think and do things with deep thought and profundity behind their action. So it's also a novel. So there is some surprises in the book. There is some action at different points. There's action in it. There is also some amount of surprise at different points. And more than anything else, it's an optimistic book. It's about optimism, how optimism and imagination can solve some of our problems. Now, if you ask me why somebody should read this book, I would say it is to really hone one's analytical and logical skills. It's useful to reconcile between opposite ideas. It's about trying to make ourselves better human beings. It's about trying to be relevant to a particular situation. There is one entire chapter on process. I think that chapter tells you what a business process is, because most of the time people are worried about substantive issues and content. But here is one chapter that really teaches this young student what a process means. And through a process of education from outside as well as from inside, this person is solving some interesting puzzles. So this whole book is about one young man solving a puzzle. So I would say you should read this book to enhance yourself and enjoy the fiction in it and have a good time. That's it.
So where can we get this book?
Well, this book is available in Amazon. It's also available in a Kindle format. It's when I last checked, it was there in almost all bookstores. Flipkart, it's available. It's available from the publisher, Notion Press itself. So if you just Google Quadrant puzzles, and you will get this book. Or if you say Shankar Menon Quadrant Puzzles, certainly you will know where to buy this book.